Uh, all right, let's not leave the meeting. Um, so yeah, it's a pleasure to be here. This evening, I'm going to share some current research and findings on how to improve our existing schools, leveraging the American Rescue Plan funds. The inspiration for this presentation came from our CTGBC membership um, and research published by the USGBC Center for Green Schools and their advocacy group, as well as other allied groups, which I'll share their sources at the end of the presentation. Just some housekeeping session etiquette. We're recording and I'll be monitoring the chat, but please keep your questions to the end. There'll be some plenty of time at the end of the presentation to open the floor. But if you do want to pop in a question so you can get it later, that's fine too. I just won't be answering them to the end. Um, this session is AAA accredited for one CEU, and there's instructions in the chat uh, to send your email to communications@ctgbc.org to record those. And also CEU, it's one CEU for general lead credentialing, so you can self-report that. So just to introduce the Connecticut Green Building Council, we're a passionate group of Connecticut builders, designers, construction folks, sustainability, and other policymakers. We're actually coming up on the 20th anniversary of the organization, so do stay tuned for more on that. It's a milestone for us, this organization. And our mission is to accelerate the healthy, resilient, equitable, and sustainable transformation of Connecticut's built environment. Some upcoming events, June 3rd, please look on the website for Building Green, Making Affordable Housing More Affordable. This is a great, wonderful development that is part of our award winner showcase series that you may have seen first last year, won an award with the annual Green Building Awards, which is now open for this year's entries. So please, again, look at our website, ctgbc.org, for all those details. Just so a little bit about me, I've been a CTGBC member for going on 8 years now. I wasn't always all that involved, sort of in the balcony, but I decided to become more active in the group. Um, First joining the advocacy committee and then running for a spot on the board. I'm so glad that I did. The past 2 years have been real energizing. There's a lot afoot in the state, in the country, in the world, having to do with sustainability. And working with the talented, passionate group, the board, I've had a privilege of serving with. It's been great connecting with professional industry leaders, um, researching and doing hosting webinars like this, and generally have a voice in the future direction of the organization. There's a lot going on. It's an exciting group to be a part of. Um, and just a note about local green building chapters and supporting them is really important. Uh, it serves as a platform for connecting professionals and emerging professionals as well. Um, and just, bringing information and news to the green building communities, informing members of important advocacy work. It's just some of the things that we do. You may have heard of NESB. CTGBC hosted the third Northeastern Summit for Sustainable Built Environment earlier this year. It was virtual. And so that's been a every other year event. Um, so stay tuned for future updates there. And you can actually go to the website still and find out about what happened there if you missed it. Um, CTGBC is a membership driven organization, so please consider joining us. Again, my name's Kai. I'm a senior sustainability consultant with Stephen Winter Associates out of our Norwalk office, about a 100-person consulting firm. We've been having our 50th anniversary next year, actually. So we've been along the way for a while, also with CTGBC's support. Um, And so, just to get to know you a little bit more, because I can't see you in this environment we're all in here. So, if you could just pop in the chat your current profession, um, and if you want to put in one thing that you'd like to take away from the presentation, you can do that too. And I'll just glance over that as I continue talking to get a sense of about you. All right. Just the highlights, the learning objectives. We'll be talking about the American Rescue Plan, of course, what it is and how it can support sustainable and healthy schools, existing school facilities. We're going to look at some of the planning considerations as local communities begin to uh, hopefully begin talking to their educational agencies, their districts, school districts, about what the plans are to use these funds, some planning considerations to touch on. Also, just going to just really focus on HVAC systems for a little bit and some of the common issues in existing schools, and how we can sort of overcome some of those with measures to improve those performance. And then finally, just reviewing tools and resources to act and be able to bring these issues to your local school boards. Okay, we got some energy engineers. Great, welcome. Architects, great. All right, all welcome here. So just some terms. Uh, there's a lot of acronyms when it comes to policy and building systems and whatnot. So just to cover these, the local education agency is LEA. It can be a public board of education, like a school district, county offices. We don't have counties, but usually a school district can be an LEA. The ESSER is the Elementary and Secondary School Emergency Relief Fund, and that's the allocation of the American Rescue Plan, or ARP, funds specifically to the state elementary and secondary schools. Indoor air quality encompasses a lot of factors, such as maintenance of temperature and relative humidity, controlling airborne contaminants, and distribution of ventilation air. Uh, Acceptable IEQ uh, really takes part of the operating and maintenance team's role. So we'll be talking about how they can help support that. Of course, HVAC is the heating, ventilation, air conditioning systems that maintain that indoor air quality that we rely on. Also provides heating and cooling and ventilation in many instances. Provides filtration for our air. Provides the thermal controls that allow us to set the environment that we need. Let's see. Okay, great. We have a lot of HVAC folks. Okay, good, 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 good. Let's see here. Where was I? And then building commissioning essentially is the quality assurance process that's intended to show that the building performs as designed. And then master planning, finally, just a general definition, how we'll be using it. The master plans for the school is developed with the school authorities and often involves local community input. And so the master plan includes what's going on currently in the school, plus future construction, future considerations that affect the building. All right, with those out of the way, we can sort of get into the meat of it here. So within the last 6 months, the federal government approved 176 billion in emergency COVID relief. Um, that includes several different packages that were released last year, culminating in the $122 billion American Rescue Plan Act, which will be the main focus of this talk. And just a little bit of the nitty gritty about that. Each state is allocated funds from this American Rescue Plan, and each state must subgrant not less than 90% of its total ARP allocation to local educational emergency relief fund, the ESSR. So 90% has to go to the local schools. in those LEAs, the local educational agencies. So uh, the LEA has to reserve at least 20% of that allocation to address learning losses that affect underrepresented student subgroups. So 20% has to go to helping overcome those immediate needs. And the remaining funds, so roughly 70%, depending on how the state allocates those others, about 70% can be used for a wide range of activities to address facility related expenses as an allowable use of the funds. Um, and so that sort of allocation related to the facilities related expenses, what we'll be focusing on here. So the one-time nature of these funds, can allow school districts to make substantial investments in renovating their schools and performing equipment upgrades that will yield benefits for years to come. So uh, educational leaders have significant flexibility in how to spend these funds, and the states have actually till June 7th this year to submit their plans for how they're going to use those funds. And then the federal education department will begin approving those and dispersing the remaining funds once the state plans are received and reviewed. Um, so once those state plans are received and reviewed, the school districts, the local school districts, will also be required to seek broad public input and actually develop their own plans for the use of the ARPESSER funds. Um, so that's one of the things I want to convey through this too, is that the ability of the local community to provide public input when we reach that stage to start to sort of direct how these funds may be used. Great, we got some other folks chiming in here. Great, some utilities, component manufacturers. All right. So the ARP, like I said, is billions of dollars, a huge package. Um, it details 18 different uses of the funds. Like I said, ranging from school facility repairs and improvements. Um, and again, it explicitly allows for certain forms of school infrastructure spending. So two of those that I wanted to single out for our conversation was repairing and improving school facilities to reduce the risk of the virus and exposure to environmental health hazards. And then also the inspection, testing, maintenance, repair, replacement. Really a pretty open-ended scope related to mechanical systems and also um, some enclosure related windows and doors improvements. All right. So I'm going to cite a recent report published by the Center for Green Schools, which is the United States Green Building Council's advocacy group, with technical support from ASHRAE, detailed how school districts have used air quality measures in their buildings to respond to COVID-19. And the findings sort of put data behind the case for school infrastructure investment. Schools relied on their HVAC systems to make buildings safer for students and teachers. But in many of these cases, these systems were outdated or not designed to support the recommended strategies, especially for the aging and the older schools. And so this report is the only known national view that I'm aware of indoor air quality in schools during the pandemic. Um, the responses covered over 4,000 schools serving 2.5 million students in 24 states. Um, and where school districts were able to act, they leaned heavily on their mechanical systems, to implement those air quality measures for students and teachers. Um, of the respondents in this study, 87% increased the outdoor air supply through the existing HVAC system, which was the recommended measure. 77% imposed a flushing strategy. I think they were saying 2 hours to allow 100% outdoor air for 2 hours before occupancy. Um, and then 70% of the respondents upgraded their filters in at least some of their schools. Great, we have some manufacturers joining us. Um, and so those were the sort of the three main measures that respondents implemented or tried to implement. And the most frequently cited challenge to implementing these protective air quality measures was that the school buildings were not designed, right, to support the strategies that were being recommended. So um, the intent is hopefully that the ARP will then come in and help us continue these measures. So for 5 of those 6 recommended air quality strategies, the challenge, that challenge was the top of mind. Um, and then there was a 6th strategy, the air cleaners with the HEPA filters is a high cost and was the most frequent challenging for schools to implement. And then just one other takeaway. So only 2/3 of the respondents were actually regularly monitoring their IAQ before the pandemic, which is actually higher than I would have guessed, but that's what they found. Um, Indicating that provided time, staffing, and funding for regular monitoring and data collection um, hadn't been a priority in the past. Um, but respondents they responded that they would want to continue with the measures they implemented during the pandemic, so they can open, right? Um, Citing student and teacher health, of course. And 70% of the school districts plan to continue some of these strategies they've implemented. So um, I hope that the ARP can sort of help fill those gaps where there were challenges they had to overcome and help them get there. So all right, so just taking a step back, we're going to start sort of high level and then drill down a bit more. Um, but essentially, all schools have to navigate their own set of circumstances. Um, but I'm going to highlight 3 principles that I think are pretty universal in their application to districts of all sizes, rural and suburban schools. And so, investing in school infrastructure is central to addressing equity. I think any conversation with a local education agency or your school district um, should include that. Healthy schools advance student learning and success. We've seen decades of research done about indoor air quality effects on cognition and student health. Um, and efficient, resilient operations save money today and forever, right? As long as the school is being run. So we want to see how these measures can also align with some of our climate goals, essentially. All right. So the first guiding principle, investing in school infrastructure. Um, we all know, school infrastructure relies heavily on local property tax, and due to that, our school buildings often reflect the inequalities that exist because of household wealth. Um, and schools in high poverty communities are more likely to have conditions that are unsafe or not suitable for learning. Um, and really improving these physical environments, hopefully may improve the health of students who are at the most risk, vulnerable communities. And reducing teacher turnover. There's been a lot of research around these topics to show that uh, safe, healthy environment makes people want to stick around and perform better. Go figure. Um, so the bottom line is for school districts, really the focus on equity, safety, and health is really one of the areas most deserving of these investments. And sort of what I want to convey here is that, as the local communities begin to provide input to their school districts to plan for future use of this funding, facility and master plans should should be looked at, and include relevant data, facility conditions information for all the buildings, um, in going into monitoring and measuring energy use, and listing out any deferred maintenance. And just going back to that green school study, the most frequently cited challenge um, uh, was that the school buildings were not designed to support the strategies that were being recommended. So um, this master planning, it's necessary to know the condition of the schools to make informed, capital improvement decisions, to implement those protective measures. So here are some of the bullet points that the act calls out. Um, this is not all of them. This is just a couple, and one highlighted here that I wanted to talk about. Um, and again, so again, evaluating and updating facilities in their condition assessments um, is explicitly listed here. So it's one that I wanted to bring up with the group here. And again, that's helping aid and prioritize, deferred maintenance and capital improvements here. And just I do want to make the disclaimer that this is my own research, and any school district should um, definitely consult, with the relevant agencies about their spending. And then so other planning considerations related to the facilities master plan. Um, you know, Master plans that I've seen work well include specific goals and relevant data about the buildings, such as the current energy use. Um, it's usually captured as an energy use intensity, or EUI. Also looks at the deferred maintenance, the age of the HVA system, and when things have been replaced. Having all that information can help, inform decisions. Um, for instance, energy efficiency measures that have a quick financial payback, like LED lighting or building controls, um, they can be bundled with other measures that have longer payback periods, sometimes financed through energy saving contracts. Um, and these contracts are most successful, as part of a plan part of the scheduled improvements for the district. And just a note about life cycle cost, not just first cost. It's helpful to understand the full financial impact of these options. It's only financial cost is only one consideration when deciding, but it's certainly an important one for making improvements to the school buildings. And then just one resource I wanted to highlight on was the 21st Century School Fund Evaluator tool. There's lots of, guidance out there for these things, but this is one that I saw frequently cited in my research um, to help organizations, policymakers, districts evaluate their master plan, to sort of a checkbox to see if it includes certain components of a good plan. And then number two, the Healthy Schools Advanced Student Learning and Success. Again, um, you know, school districts are going to be required to seek public input to develop their own plans for the use of these funds. So hopefully you can begin to have these conversations with your school district, touching on these guiding principles, and why they're important to include. Um, so just to reiterate, I mean, the focus of the facilities funding is protecting students and teachers, right? Um, Both from the virus, but other environmental hazards. Um, and the act actually lists out other toxins like mold and asbestos, and other toxins, PFAS, antimicrobials, and flame retardants that have been shown to harm developing children. Um, and so then the second point in this is that a healthy environment goes hand in hand with energy efficiency. Um, you can have both. And projects that are implemented to protect health have the potential if planned with energy efficiency in mind, to achieve both. And then finally, decades of research has shown the linkages between children's health and performance, and looking at things like fossil fuel emissions from burning fossil fuels, um, and some of the other environmental uh, risks that we mentioned. And again, these are some of the examples from the Act related to existing schools, or could relate to existing schools, that support student learning and success. Again, so yeah, the remediation of mold, lead, and other sources of poor indoor air quality. Um, this is absolutely important, and happy to see that the Act supports this. Um, you know, a building is a complex and dynamic system. Its occupants are, um, integral and constantly changing component of the system, the building. So really looking at the building as a whole system, and uh, considering the impacts of changing insulation and other improvements to the enclosure and how that might relate to indoor air quality and energy efficiency, um, is is an important consideration to make. Um, all stakeholders should understand that any indoor dampness, persistent indoor dampness, um, is not normal and not desired, and can lead to problems for the occupants and the building. And long-term, accumulation of that moisture, um, leads to mold growth, but also, can have shorten the life of building materials, and in the schools, it reduces their value. Um, so we want to be cognizant of that as we start looking at the master plans and deciding how to use these funds. And just making a connection between energy efficiency and indoor air quality. Um, Connecticut has a target to reduce greenhouse gases by 45% by 2030. That's going to go by in a flash. 2030 will be here, and we just need to be aware that as we're providing potentially more ventilation in buildings, that we're um, also considering energy efficiency, and I'll talk a little bit more about those sorts of things that we can do to balance that. Um, and then I touched on fixing the moisture issues related to inadequate doors, windows, and walls, and there is explicit language in the Act to address those improvements. There's a sort of a lot here on this slide, but I don't know if it's. I'll explain it as best I can going through it. But this was the number one recommendation, ASHRAE recommendation, for operating schools, and that was to increase the percent of the outdoor air into the facility. The guidance may have changed, but it was ventilating 100% 2 hours before occupancy, um, and you know schools really leaned heavily on their mechanical systems to be able to implement these recommendations, and unfortunately some schools, it was unequal how different schools, to the degree schools could implement these measures. um, and the indoor air can be 2 to 5 times more polluted than the outdoor air. So most HVAC system designers understand that increased amounts of outdoor air supply is generally better for IAQ, generally. Um, However, there are concerns over the implication of adding outdoor air has on, like, the first cost, the equipment sizing, um, but also operating costs of the HVAC system. Um, and so just to talk a little bit generally about the HVAC systems in schools. There are many different types of air handling units that provide that supply heating and ventilation. Um, but for general IEQ implications in schools, um, IEQ air handling units can be divided into two groups: unit ventilators and individual heat pumps that serve a single room without ducts, and central air handling units that serve rooms via ductwork. Um, and the research that I saw from the EPA related to COVID was where feasible, they were recommending the central HVAC air handling units that serve multiple rooms in lieu of the unit ventilators or individual heat pumps. Uh, and then related to energy recovery, where feasible is important for both for first cost, energy costs, um, moisture control. They don't have to be at odds with each other with good IEQ. Um, so for those not familiar, energy recovery ventilation equipment is able to capture some of the, the heat energy um, in the air, supplied through the air. And that energy recovery can make the negative implications of providing more outdoor air, say 15 CFMs per person, behave more like 5 CFMs while still um, providing that the increased flow rate. Um, in terms of controls, ventilation controls, supplying acceptable quantities of outdoor air to occupied spaces is critical, as we've said. Um, a lot of many school ventilation systems cannot indicate whether outdoor air is even being supplied to the school. The controls are very rudimentary, um, much less gauge the quantity of that air. So virtually all existing school ventilation systems rely on existing school ventilation systems rely on a fixed damper to regulate the amount of outdoor air. But there's inherent challenges with that sort of system. Um, wind stack effect, unbalanced supply and return um, are just some of the variables that can cause under or over ventilation, which can affect the IQ, but also the energy costs. Um, and one recommendation that came up in my research was specifying the addition of a measuring station that can actively control the amount of outdoor airflow. Uh, and I would suggest consulting an MEP designer when you're considering any of these systems changes. I would certainly defer to a designer whose expertise is in designing these systems to make any solid recommendations there. But also an important part of HVAC system is the filtration. In addition to sort of the dust that's floating around, um, filtration can filter out infectious bacteria and viruses. Um, just quickly, filters are rated using a MERV or MERV rating system. Um, there's other ratings, but I see MERV around the most, and that indicates the percentage of particles and the size of the particles that filters can remove through the air. So the general recommendations that I've been seeing, schools should consider replacing filters with those related with MERV 13 or higher to best filter the viruses. Um, and the filters with these ratings are able to significantly reduce the particles that size that the virus usually is holds on to. Um, but some systems can't accept these size filters, so it's important to know again what you're dealing with and planning ahead with any of those changes. Um, and also related to filtration, um, specifying a pre-filter is often preferable. It's a lower efficiency filter, but it captures a lot of the big chunks, if you will, before they uh, it captures those so they don't get clogged in the higher rated, more expensive filter. So that pre-filter is generally less expensive, and changing those more frequently extends the useful life of the main filters. So that's my HVAC spiel. Um, Moving on to energy efficiency more. Again, often with schools, there's this books or bricks conversation or dilemma. There's just not enough funds, and a lot of schools have deferred maintenance. I live in Bridgeport, and I can tell you, my wife's a teacher, and yep, check that box. So, using these COVID relief funds to invest in energy efficiency. Um, is really a smart move. I mean, investing in energy, it can turn this one-time investment into, um, a stream of ongoing budget savings. Um, Investing in measures that strengthen that infrastructure are likely to reduce future spending on repairs. And schools can achieve significant energy use reductions, and by generating those savings, they can, divert some of those funds to other district services and the students, resources and learning. Um, and so some savings can be achieved with no cost actions. Maybe adjusting controls, set points differently, um, and other significant reductions are achieved through investments, to repair or replace upgradable equipment and structures. So there will be some of both. Um, Low cost actions include, like I said, changing the filters, seeing if there's a pre-filter available for the systems uh, applicable, um, and then also just equipment cleaning, and, general housekeeping maintenance um, can help prolong that extend that life of that equipment. Green cleaning products also play a part in indoor environmental quality. So there is language in the act related to reviewing and specifying, you know, less harmful or no harm chemicals in schools. Um, so some schools don't have mechanical ventilation exhaust systems, and those that don't should, I would say, prioritize those funds to installing HVAC and system controls. Um, and schools that have mechanical systems, can improve upon them. Based on the evidence that most schools have ventilation problems, there's always improvements to be made. Um, you want to make sure you have good control, you have filtration, and the flow rates are operating as designed. You're getting enough, you're not getting too much at the wrong times. So that's a part of this planning aspect, and we'll get into the monitoring in a minute. So building commissioning is, like I said, a quality assurance process. Um, if you want to verify ventilation, the best way to do so is to measure the ventilation. Um, it's been a LEED requirement for those familiar with LEED for many years, measuring the ventilation of existing buildings. Um, and more importantly than monitoring is controlling the airflows in and out of the building. And that's really critical to, ensure proper pressurization, not creating a situation that can lead to mold and other bad things related to indoor air. Um, and then finally, one recommendation that popped up a couple times was just that when replacing equipment, when schools get to that point of replacement, to uh, look for ways to transition away from polluting equipment, such as fossil fuel-based heating systems and natural gas fuel kitchen appliances. Um, Combustion generates particulates and all sorts of gases, um, and moving away from those, specifying electric Energy Star certified appliances, um, it can start moving us towards the future of electrification. And again, just some two examples of some qualified spending related to energy efficiency. Um, these are again in the ARP. The We talked about the conditions assessment already, and another point here was just specifying training for facilities staff. Um, and this is really critical. We do a lot of trainings ourselves for maintenance staff, um, and the effective operations is really fundamental to protecting the building, but also operating in for the students' benefit. Um, Substandard maintenance or incorrect operations, can result in from a combination of factors, but um, maintenance budgets are often the first to be reduced and eliminated when money gets tight. So books or bricks dilemma, and this ARPs explicitly calls out training for facilities for HVAC. Um, and then another combining factor is you know after a new building is or any major renovation is done, um, the building staff is often given minimal or no training on how to operate and maintain those building systems. It's just like you never driven a car before and you're asked to go on a road trip, or I don't know, bad analogy, but you get my point. There's really a gap in that knowledge, and it could be improved on. Which brings me to some of the planning considerations. Um, we've talked about the master planning and upgrades, but those are only the first steps. Really, to be successful, you need to implement that staff training, ensure that the folks running the building are well prepared. If there's any new technology, new procedures, changing to the pre-filter instead of the main filter or something. There's simple things like that can sort of go unnoticed or unknown if they're not trained told about that. um, and so also related to monitoring, part of that overall planning process is to get in a regular practice of reporting facility data and conditions to the school boards, to the community, so they can understand how the building is performing. Because as we've seen, the quality of the building and the indoor air quality really can affect the overall success of the students. So making that connection between building performance and health, well-being is super important. Um, let's see here. So that's, for instance, in air quality measurements, we can measure the ventilation as I mentioned. Um, and periodic testing is really the best way to ensure that the systems are operating as intended. Dampers get stuck, things break down, and without actual testing verification data, those things can go unnoticed for a long time until there's a real issue. Um, and related to energy, there's tools out there that you may have heard of. There's the EPA Portfolio Manager, um, provides an Energy Star score based on utility bills. Um, and that's an online platform that you just enter in your utility data, and trending that over time can really be a potent indicator of how the building is performing. Um, and hopefully you're not wasting money um, with costly equipment that's not working right. Um, so another let's see here, another tool out there is the lead arc. It can tie into the Energy Star portfolio manager uh, process. Um, ARC also has inputs for water, waste generation, IEQ related to VOCs and carbon dioxide. Um, and another indicator is occupant health and wellness. Um, and then finally, G-Pro, operations and maintenance, touching on the training aspect. G-Pro was developed by the Urban Green, which is the Green Building chapter of New York City, and it's a training program. And operations maintenance is just one of the accreditations that can be provided. Those are often, if you stay in the loop with CDGBC, and I think EverSource also sponsors those. I could be mistaken, but those, if you're interested in those sorts of trainings, there's information out there can help you, connect you. Um, and just sort of continuing on with that, the performance-based certification for ARC in Connecticut, um, for new schools and major renovations, the high performance building policy requires LEED Silver. Um, it doesn't specifically mention ARC, but this is related to existing schools, this program. Um, and like I said, the ARC directly integrates with building management system, can help track um, energy use, water use. Then there's manual inputs that have to be made for the IEQ um, and waste. Um, I work with LEED a lot, so I just want to mention some of the pilot credits that are out there related to reentry. Um, Essentially, it's citing other guidance related, mostly AIA related guidance to and CDC guidance related to reentry. Basically, assessing plans, reentry plans, to ensure that they align with the best guidance out there this time. So if you're working on LEED projects, that's possible. Um, and then getting into sort of this call to action, I like to end my presentations with something we can do. So states are, like I said, are submitting their plans in a couple weeks, 2 weeks, for federal approval. And once those applications become getting approved, um, the states will be working with the school districts, and probably already are, um, to figure out how to use those funds. And the school districts are actually required to seek that public input. So there's an opportunity there, I would say, for you, whether you have children or not in schools. It's absolutely important um, to contact your school boards. Just ask them what their plans are. Do they have a master plan? Are they considering training their HVAC or their maintenance staff? Just starting with those sorts of questions, I think could lead to a positive conversation with them. All right. And there's a lot of information out there. Include some resources at the end of this slide deck. Um, and for you to look up things for yourself. I find the Center for Green Schools by the USGBC really helpful, has some great resources there. AIA, ASHRAE, obviously CDC, and even WHO is caught up with some of those recommendations. Um, and then also the EPA. I do want to, they've been a constant researcher and provider of really solid information for a long time, specifically EPA tools for schools, provide great ways on how to incorporate these things into curriculum for students, and also fun ways to sort of be eyes in the sky in the schools, in the buildings, doing treasure hunts to look for like IQ issues. It's wild. It's check it out. I want to do it. Anyway, so just some guiding documents. I mentioned all these before. Harvard School of Health. If you haven't read their reports about student cognition and IEQ, check that out. Um, Obviously, USGBC and EPA. Let's see. I think that's about it. And then the master plan guide is just a tool for those that are interested in master planning um, as a guide. All right, so I think that brings us to about 50 minutes. So we'll just open it up for questions. We have 9 minutes for questions. So if you can go ahead and unmute yourself. I'm gonna just look and see if there are any questions in the chat.
Thank you, Kai. This is Joya Cannell speaking.
Joe?
Very comprehensive and useful um, presentation. I am curious, and apologies, I did get in a little late. Can you speak to any recommendations about how city school districts would get directly involved with this? Anything that you've seen, any best practices? But I'm kind of curious to hear a little bit more about that sort of
Yeah, yeah,
pipeline of change making. Uh,
yeah. Like how connecting how it comes to the local groups,
mhm,
districts.
mhm.
Um, that's a good question. They will be involved. I'm not aware offhand of specific groups that are working with the state at this point to to implement or talk about these plans. The state has to submit their plans to the government, federal government, in June 7th. Um, and then my understanding is that after that, the local school districts will be brought in talking with the state. So, yeah, sorry, I don't have a better answer. I'm not exactly sure of when they'll be, or that process exactly.
Thank you.
Mhm. But I would say if anyone's interested in staying in touch, up to date with the news, definitely join. I guess we could do uh, an update through the advocacy committee if you're involved with them when developments occur. That could definitely happen. And yes, yeah, the session is recorded and absolutely the slides are available. Um, yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for that plug for the advocacy group. Yeah, I would definitely recommend folks that are interested in staying abreast of specific state and local related updates to join the advocacy committee. And and also follow the Connecticut Green Building Council Emerging Professionals Instagram. We've been getting much more involved in making our advocacy work more transparent, more openly available through that platform. So that's Instagram at CTGBCEP. Thank you.
Thanks, Rhea. All right. Well, I'll say then we're coming up on the hour. If there's no other questions, we can all go enjoy the nice weather. Let's see.
Hi, Kai. I just had a quick question. You had mentioned mold on a couple of cases, and I know you focused on HVAC, but would this also include possibility of funding for equipment to help in regards to mitigating asthma and allergy within, to improve indoor air quality within schools, or building materials that promote asthma and allergy friendly environments?
Yeah, there was language explicitly about mold and other indoor environmental contaminants. So I think that it's possible. I think it's going to come down to what the state and local school districts decide on how to spend that money. So there's an opportunity there to advocate for a position like that, and it's an important issue. Don't get me wrong, but that yeah, I think that it's possible.
Thank you.
Yeah. Anything else? Well, it was really great speaking with all of you this evening, and I hope you join us for another uh, policy talk or whatever it may be. Again, there's some upcoming events. The award-winning presentation development. It will be on our website, and let me just go to that real quick. Here we go. Yeah, Willow Creek on June 3rd. it would be worthwhile. And again, if you have any green building projects that you've been working on, please submit them for the Green Building Awards. It's a great way to highlight your achievements. So without further ado, I'm going to ask Chris if we're okay to leave. Thanks.
Yes, we are. If anybody has any other questions, please email me at communications@ctgbc.org. You can check out all sorts of resources about advocacy, the awards, other events and programs, or all the benefits of joining the Connecticut Green Building Council at ctgbc.org.
Great. All right, thanks. Take care, everyone. Thanks again. Bye-bye.